Today on Screen It or Stream It,
I swear, if you try to open this episode with a pun, I can't be held responsible for what I do to you.
Gotcha. I'm not sure how I get myself in these sticky situations. Okay, tangled web. Oh wait, no, that's no good.
Today on Screen It or Stream It,
just your friendly neighborhood movie review.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is rated PG for frenetic sequences of animated action violence, thematic elements, and mild language.
It's the story of Miles, a young teen that is trying to master his Spidey powers.
He encounters another Spider-Man, and that's when things get interesting.
Different realities are converging as the accelerator in Fisk's laboratory has torn down some of the walls between dimensions.
It becomes a race against the clock to get each version of Spider-Man back to their respective universes before they die from exposure to a universe that is out of sync with their biology.
We've got some great animation and plenty of superhero fun. What did we rate this one?
We got together and decided that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a good movie.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So what do we think about this one?
It was good. It was didn't have high expectations going in.
Yeah, me either.
And I was pleasantly surprised.
I thought it was amazing. I'd say it was even spectacular.
Somebody had to fill in for Josh.
Somebody did have to fill in for Josh, yes. Again, this is one of the ones I wasn't necessarily looking forward to. I wasn't opposed to it. I just wasn't sure what we were watching. I was like, okay, it's a cartoon version. Also, and it's just a personal thing, I'm usually, like, there's a main character, right? Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Hal Jordan is the Green Lantern, and a lot of times when they start changing the main, who the main character is, I kind of, I just don't really care anymore. And Miles Morales is Spider-Man. Well, there's several Spider-Mans, but he's the main Spider-Man in this one. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like that or not, but I really did.
Yeah.
Again, we got another origin story.
We got one origin story?
We got multiple origin stories, but they almost did it tongue-in-cheek. Like, they realized, origin. They did this, like,
here we go again.
Here we go again. And so they made that part of the thing. And so I really enjoyed that. I wasn't so sure, again, from the previews, the multiple Spideys. Mm-hmm. I was like, ooh, I don't know if that's going to work. And that did. And it worked really well, actually.
John Mulaney is... in his role in there was just amazing. I love the little Easter eggs that they were throwing in there where they had the Broadway showing of Hi Hello.
Was he the spectacular Spider-Ham there?
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Nick Cage, like, that just threw me.
Yeah.
Like, when he popped out, I was like, hey, it sounds just like Nick Cage. Oh, it is Nick Cage after a while. It's like, yeah, that's definitely Nick Cage. That kind of threw me for a loop. But I wasn't so sure. Like, the story pretty much revolves around Miles becoming Spider-Man. They go to a different dimension. Spider-Man comes, or a different dimension. Peter Parker comes in and kind of trains him, is supposed to train him. And I really enjoyed that, like, because Peter Parker is this, like, I guess, reluctant mentor. He's kind of old and fat and tired, and like, I just don't really want to do this anymore. And Miles Morales is very upbeat and happy, and he's like, let's get after this. And so I really liked their interaction. I thought that was great. I really liked Spider-Gwen, although Spider-Woman. So Miles is just starting. He has no idea what he's doing. Peter Parker is kind of, like I said, old and fat and tired, and he's just kind of and slovenly, and he's not that great. And then she shows up and she's like, I got this stuff down. Yeah. And she really does the superheroing for a chunk of it there. And so I really enjoyed that. Then you got, Spider-Ham and Spider-Man Noir. The only one I was like, well, why are you here, was the and I guess supposed to be anime girl,
the spider robot.
Yeah, with the spider robot. And that one just, it didn't really add anything. It didn't seem to do anything.
So I'm going to have to disagree with you quite a bit. So from what you're saying so far, I thought the movie was fantastic, but I didn't think it was about the different spider people and the characters as much as it was about art. I thought that this was, on a surface, a Spider-Man movie, and if you're into Spider-Man, you get a lot of that. but this was really an ode to 20th century post-1950s artwork. You had, there's an Easter egg at the end where they start talking about 1960s animation. You have the anime style of artwork. You have the noir style with the black and white and a lot of the high shadow. You have the over-the-top cartoony like Looney Tunes stuff. You have the 3D rotoscope going on. Even with Fisk, you have the takeaways where they intend to make it look like an oil painting. So it's like oil painting animation slides run through a rotoscope. And I thought that was amazing. And to me, that's what it looked like. If you see the opening credits and the closing credits, they do a lot of pop culture, almost Andy Warhol type stuff. And when I looked at the movie in that way, that this was a tribute to comic book and cartoon and pop art of the last 70 years, I thought that this was one of the most important movies of the year, if not the decade.
Well, see, and I ended up, and it was one of the things I was kind of like, I'm not sure I'm going to like. So the overall art style, if you take away all the main, like Miles Morales, they tried to basically recreate a comic book. They even had the pointillism like dots and things on there. And I saw that in the trailer and I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those stylistic things and it's not going to work and it's going to get tiresome and it's going to get old. And it didn't. Like, it grew on me and I really enjoyed that and I liked the way it came together and it worked. And then, like you said, once they throw in the other characters, each one of them kind of gets their own art style. And I did end up really enjoying that.
Yeah.
But to me, I didn't even think about that being it was just a device they used, and I enjoyed it, but it didn't really mean a whole lot to me.
Here's one of the big things that I thought was interesting is after I saw the movie, I had this thought in my head, and I was holding on to it. And I went back and I saw the movie last night with my girlfriend, and she afterward said something to me, and it was word for word. By the way, hi. She said the same thought that I had word for word, which was, I wish I would have seen it in 3D. Because there's so many of the effects that you're watching in the artwork that you feel that you're missing that third dimension. And this is one of the few movies that I've seen in 2D that I was craving to see that third dimension that was intended by the art directors.
Well, so it actually was one of the things I really, really disliked, or that kind of set me off in the movie or took me out of the movie. And I wanted to see if it happened again. We did go to the 2D one first. Yeah. And it really looked like a movie that they had built for 3D and then translated to 2D.
But what's funny is that you say it looks like 3D because you see the red and the blue. But that's not how 3D works nowadays. It uses the polarizes camera, so that was intentional.
Well, no, I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't even pay attention to the red and blue. I didn't see that. I saw almost like dual images.
Yeah.
Like ghosting. And which is how the polarizing works. But it wasn't. So when you watch the movie, the main focus is in focus, and it's sharp and it's beautiful. But once you got out to the edges, if there was a shot over somebody's shoulder and there would be an ear and a head in frame, then I would see a ghost of the person. Which I know I'm not even supposed to be looking at that, but like my eye kept catching it, and it kind of took me out of the movie. Now that's all, like, I don't know if that's something they intended to do, if that was some remnant from 3D transfer, if that was something the guy didn't set the film up right in the theater we were watching it in. I don't know. So did you notice that on the second viewing?
The second viewing, it's there, so it's intentional, or like you said, it was something that was a problem in how they translated it.
Which it didn't ruin the movie for me, but it was something I could kind of take back. Now, the only other thing I didn't like that. That kind of bothered me. The only other thing I really disliked from the movie was Kingpin's character design.
Yeah.
I did, because even when you've got Spider-Ham in there, like, I'm good with that, but for some reason, Kingpin has this huge, like, torso, which I know he's supposed to be a big guy, but he's like...
It looks like a UPS truck.
He does. He looks like a walking UPS truck. He couldn't exist or fit through a doorway. He couldn't exist in a room. And it's just like, I don't know, that was just kind of weird and took me out. Now, the rest of it, I loved. I love the story. I love the character interactions. I love the backstory, and I love Miles' family. I love his dad, the cop dad, and
not this cop.
For me, that was my favorite part of the movie, was the interaction between Miles and his dad. I hope that they continue going with Miles Morales in the future. I've seen Peter Parker now in, what, 6, 7 movies, 8 movies? And I think I've seen everything I'm going to see from Peter at this point. And none of it, except in the last Spider-Man movie, was done super well.
Well, we also have the other Sony Spider-Verse movie that came out this year, Venom. So we have multiple Spider-Man takes that Sony could be rolling out into their thing to kind of compete.
So was this was Into the Spider-Verse? I know it was
Sony Marvel joint venture.
Sony Marvel joint venture.
Yeah.
Now Venom was also a Sony Marvel joint venture, right? It wasn't just Sony.
I think it was primarily Sony, but
yeah. But and the Tom Holland is also a joint venture, but the previous ones are Sony.
I think the Tom Holland one might be Marvel.
But Marvel tends to do things better than Sony does when they're dealing with superheroes. I kind of wonder how much input they had there. So this was not a negative to me, but it was just a question I kind of had. I'm a comic book fan and have read some comic books, but not like super hardcore. I felt like there was a lot of things in this movie I missed out on because I didn't know who they were, what they were. Like, I needed some more. And in fairness, a lot of the comic book movies now hold your hand, right? They step you through everything, they introduce everything. This one just kind of, it jumped in both feet, and it was like characters. Here's this guy, here's that guy. Like Kingpin, I recognize they gave no description of him, or there's no backstory, no anything for him. You just had to know who he was. And he had 2 henchmen with him, and I had, Doc Ock, I know, but it ended up being completely different, and the other guy, no idea.
Tombstone maybe was the other one?
Tombstone was in there, and then
no idea who that was.
Scorpion was in there. But here's the thing that's interesting, and you're right, you will miss out on this part if you're not really into the comics, is they did a lot of name dropping of the writers of the different altered Spider-Verses, and so you'll see that a lot of the things in Miles Morales' universe that are unique to him, they would have Bendis written on the different restaurants that are in there, and then they would have different artist names whenever someone was from kind of a different area, and they did a good job of putting the actual writers' names on the issues that they represent.
Well, see, and so you thought this was a great movie because it used all that stuff that, like, I didn't even get, and I still enjoyed the movie a lot. You probably enjoyed it more than I did, but I still one of the best movies I saw all year. Just story-wise, character development-wise, like, it did a great job. It had some heartfelt moments. It had a fun story, some good action sequences. It did a lot of stuff right.
I was, aside from the comic book aspect, I was pretty blown away at visually the climax at the end is a very abstract sort of fight that's going on. There's a lot of concepts there that are kind of hard, I would think, to really grasp, but all the kids that I saw watching it, they thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's kind of like the whole nihilistic existential crisis that's going on, and everyone's like, oh, I'm eating it up, and it's like, great.
Well, that's what I say, and I'm a lover of animation in general, but a good animated movie that everybody can love, it has something there at a higher level, and then it has stuff like you can just sit and not know what's going on and enjoy it. And I think this does both, and that's when you really have something that's great, is when it works on both those levels. I think I fall somewhere in between. I don't have the high level of comic book knowledge, but I do know a little bit of stuff. And I can see where a kid would sit down and enjoy it and, just have a great time with it. Also, that last scene is totally trippy, right? The rifts between universes are opening up and all the colors and stuff. And when we walked out, I said, I wasn't sure. I was like, oh, we're in this like big run of live action movies. Why are we throwing a cartoon movie in here? But this would not have worked at all. Like the things they do, things that happen, perfectly fine and perfectly believable in a comic book setting, in a cartoon setting. But if that had been in real life, we would have walked out and went, what was that CGI garbage?
It would have looked terrible.
It would have been horrible.
They tried to do almost that exact same scene in 2001, Space Odyssey. Like that's what the ending is more or less about, in a weird way, about time travel, multiple dimensions, and that's what you get in live action if you try to do it in live action, and no one understood.
But but it worked great.
It worked great here.
it didn't dumb things down for kids, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And my daughter is 12, and she understood everything. She enjoyed everything. Kids will kind of move up to whatever you present in front of them, and it was good. Adults could watch it because there's so many things I go and watch with her that are terrible. I just want to walk out in front of a car when I leave the theater, and this wasn't one of those.
No, and that's what I said. It works on all those levels, and that's a mark of a great movie.
And talking about kids moving up, I like that there are adult, mature themes that are not negative. They're not bad. It's a mature theme to talk about dealing with self-doubt, dealing with personal guilt, dealing with fear about performing well. You know, we're dealing with someone who is afraid to succeed at one point early in the movie.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things are hard topics, but there's nothing that you should shield your kids from. It's just that you usually don't talk about these until a little bit later in life. And the movie does a good job of presenting those moral dilemmas in a way that's accessible for kids.
Well, there's death in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, people die. There are real consequences and things happen. And it's not the Disney death. It's not, oh, my mom died off screen, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, characters die, people die. And, like, I can see people saying, well, that's not very kid friendly, but like you said, they did a really good job of it. It was done in a very touching and heartwarming way, and it gave some credence, some power to the movie, I thought.
And Miles having two male role models in his life, one good, one bad, was also a strong point there. And it shows that it's okay for a kid, even with these bad people in his life, to still love that person, which is kind of a complicated thing to present in a cartoon.
Well, I don't know how bad. I mean, the uncle wasn't asking
He's a
Miles.
bad dude.
He's a bad dude.
All right, in the movie I watched, he wasn't. I mean, he ended up being bad, but he wasn't asking Miles to do bad things.
That's the problem that people have, I think, nowadays in our society, is that you have people who they're a good person, but they hang out with the wrong crowd, and then they do things that are illegal and crime, and you want to justify, and you want to say, well, I know this person's a good person, but they just do this, but it has consequences.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. I mean, from what I watched, he was doing horrible things.
Yeah.
But when Miles came around, he was like, hey, what's up, Miles? Let's watch TV.
Yeah.
Now, he did take him, they went tagging, which I mean, is about the worst thing they did. He wasn't, like, to me, he wasn't taking Miles and going, hey, let's go kill some people. Hey, Miles, let's go do drugs. Hey, Miles, let's go. He was kind of like the free-spirited, like, uncle. Now, when Miles wasn't there, he was doing, horrible things but he wasn't trying to drag. I didn't see him trying to drag Miles down that path.
Is it okay if I do a spoiler alert? Or?
Okay.
Spoiler alert. So when he takes him tagging,
Yeah.
he's taking him to his area where he's doing homework for his next crime.
But he doesn't ask him.
He doesn't ask him to, but he takes him to the place where he's going to
See,
be
I
doing
just
the
thought it
crime,
was,
and that's a dangerous
hey,
location.
I've got a reclusive area where we won't get caught. So I saw that as him trying to be protective of Miles, because, hey, if we go out on the street and you do this, because Miles wanted to paint and he wanted to tag, and he's like, well, let me take you to this secluded spot where you're not going to get caught and the police are not going to be here. I don't know, that's the way I took it. Trust me, I'm a pessimist and I hate everybody, so I'm not a yay, free-spirited, great. But I just didn't see it that way.
Well, I think we were getting shades of gray rather than the black-white that we usually get in this.
Which is, again, is a great thing, because that, you got something different out of it than I got, and again, mark of a great movie.
All right, because this movie is kind of goofy and silly, it made me in the mood to watch something else a little goofy and silly. I'm gonna recommend Galaxy Quest. It's a sci-fi spoof. It's very Star Trek-y, but it's people who played in a Star Trek type series that are now on the convention scene, getting mistaken for their characters and taken on an adventure. Which is kind of like this movie. You have a whole lot of different characters being brought in from different times and stuff and thrown in doing something.
Well,
I didn't express that very well. But
so my favorite part of the movie was Peter Parker and Miles's relationship, because Miles he's enthusiastic and he's just discovered he's got this new world open up to him, and he wants to live it, to breathe it, to do it. And he gets in touch with Peter Parker, who's been doing it forever, and he's like, kid, calm down. And so my recommendation follows kind of that same path, and it's Men in Black. Just because you've got you've got kind of the crotchety old guy that's like, kid, you don't know what you're in for, calm down, and you got the exuberant, like.
I was hoping you were going to say Training Day.
No, not Training Day.
Training Day with aliens.
But you also have this kind of fantastical world, and not really superheroes, but kind of superhero-y, comic booky type stuff going on. So that's my recommendation.
Okay. My recommendation is not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, but if you enjoyed the animation and you wanted to see altered versions of heroes that you like from Marvel, Next Avengers, which is a 2008 film that was animated straight to video, but it's fun and it's got some interesting takes on some of your Avengers heroes that you're more familiar with.